And Louise, if that wasn't enough for the week for the King, he received a Rolls-Royce from Bahrain. So what's your view on this and what's the message that it sends?
Well, this is very interesting, and it would have been a very tricky gift to negotiate. It was actually a gift for his coronation a few years back, and it's a Rolls-Royce Cullinan, which is an SUV, a gigantic vehicle, very, very expensive as well, well over $500,000 Australian, and beloved of Bollywood stars and Kardashians apparently, and apparently it's also like a rap star's dream vehicle as well. That aside, of course, we know that Charles is very much eco-friendly and doesn't sort of like petrol guzzling vehicles. I think he sort of goes around the Highgrove estate in his own sort of EV Land Rover. So it may have been decided that it would have been ruder to decline the gift than to actually accept it from one king to another. So again, a lot of behind the scenes back channeling probably. And it is a coronation gift. It isn't as though the king himself has gone out to buy this sort of Rolls Royce. He's probably more used to a Rolls Royce Phantom. That's more the aristocracy's vehicle of choice. So, and I don't think he'll be seen driving it or probably even in the back seat being chauffeured in it, and it's not been seen in public anyway. It's part of the sort of official household fleet, but not Charles's personal vehicle. So he could still get some criticism over it, but it will be handled very carefully.
Absolutely fascinating, and I'm not expecting there's going to be a huge number of miles on that clock from what you've had to say. And Angela, speaking of fanfare, this time the Sussexes, and you know, we waited for so long for Meghan to release her As Ever products, and now it appears that some of these won't be restocked. What's your takeaway?
Oh, can she do anything that doesn't have problems associated with it? So, as we know, when her brand dropped on April the 2nd, all the products sold out within 45 minutes. She's now done Meghan's now done a podcast where she said, look, they may not restock some of these products, that she's looking at some new products in the beginning of 2026. Well, that's a year away. It's not like, you know, if Nike doesn't just devise a caption of just do it, but only sometimes. You know, the iPhone wasn't created in 2007 and then kind of, well, we'll just think about that. We might not bring it through until 2009. The Invictus Games, you don't have them every 3 years, you have them every 2 years because that's how it works. And of course, what's happened now, and then of course she's backtracked, and after she did this podcast interview, a source said to a British newspaper that, oh, no, things will be restocked. So there's all these mixed messaging that's occurring. And the problem with that, as brand experts are pointing out, is that lack of cohesion and that lack of clarity doesn't allow a brand to build successfully. But I think actually this is Meghan's brand. It's when they left with Megxit, you know, it was very reactive. That wasn't thought through. They thought they could be part of the royal family and then they couldn't be part of the royal family. Look, everyone has the right to change their mind. She can be American Riviera Orchard one week and she can be As Ever the next. But if you really want people to follow you and believe in you, then you have to have some consistency and cogency in the way you're thinking.
And it's not the only mixed message this week, Louise. I mean, she's also made some really interesting comments in that podcast, you know, around having money and making money. And, you know, what was the context of those comments, I suppose, and what's been the reaction to that?
Well, this is Meghan at her disingenuous best, surely. She talks about having a scarcity money mindset, sort of worried about where the next dollar's coming from. I don't think anyone believes that for a second. I think the only scarcity with Meghan is her authenticity. This is a part of a conversation for the last episode of her Confessions of a Female Founder podcast, and her guest is a legitimate self-made businesswoman, Sarah Blakely, who created Spanx shapewear and is now a billionaire, and gave some very sort of good advice about making money. It's fun to make money, it's fun to buy things, but it's also fun to give the money away. And at one point Meghan says, that's not a bad idea, I might like to try that. Well, clearly she could do that any day of the week. To sort of complain about being a millionaire and, you know, the pressure of having so much money is absolute rubbish. This is someone who's always chased fame and wealth, and apparently at one point was rather sort of put out because Harry was not a billionaire, he was just a mere millionaire, or maybe a multi-millionaire, certainly once he got Diana's inheritance. So I find any conversation about her trying to be relatable and to say, yes, it's very hard when women are not taught about money and taught not to speak about money is absolute rubbish.
And that isn't the end. That isn't the end of it from Meghan this week. She posted this video of her beekeeping with Lilibet. Now, Angela, I think it's always endearing to see parents doing activities with their kids. Should she just do more of this stuff?
Oh, it's such a tricky one, isn't it? Because I love seeing these pictures as well. In fact, all royal children, I love seeing pictures of them. You know, and particularly William and Kate and the pictures that they show us of their children. The problem with this is that we're not seeing their faces at all, and it's a deliberate, obviously, a strategy. But it's an about turn from an earlier strategy that Meghan and Harry had when they were in the UK. Of course, the typical way was if you had a baby, you would stand on the outside the hospital not long after you'd given birth, and the media would get their photograph. Now, Meghan and Harry upended that, and they have upended and changed their minds on their picture philosophy ever since. Now that Meghan has something she's trying to sell, her children are being conscripted into her marketing. And look, I have an issue with that. The OECD came out with a report last week that looked at the digital lives of children, and they talked specifically about parenting and the impact that that has on children's privacy. It's very hard when you've put out pictures of young children to then, when other people, particularly as they become older and you know, people on the street snap pictures of them or see them at a playgroup or a kindergarten, to then stamp down on it if you've not had a cohesive policy on it with yourself. And I just think I'd love to know what Harry thinks. Is Harry really happy with his children being photographed? Of course, he grew up in the royal family and knew what it was like to have cameras on him the whole time. So that's what I'd love to know, what he thinks.